Welcome, everyone. I'm Danielle Patterson, Executive Director of Family Office at ISS Market Intelligence, and I am so grateful you are sharing this hour with us. Before we get started, as I mentioned, if you haven't, we've got Portugal. Drop your name in the chat. Let us know where you're joining from. And for those who'd like to continue the conversation, feel free to share your LinkedIn as well. And it's just always fun to have these live. So my goal is, of course, to pass the floor over to Jimmy so we can all learn from him. But throughout, if you have questions, feel free. The chat can get kind of busy and noisy. So there is a Q&A if you're not familiar with Zoom. It's along the bottom. You can drop your questions in there. And if it makes sense to kind of weave those in throughout, we will. And we'll make some time there at the end as well. So our guest today is Jimmy Hayes Nelson, co-founder of WellCrafted Story. And Jimmy helps leaders, founders, advisors, and executives communicate with more clarity, build trust faster, and turn complex ideas into stories people actually remember. And I had the chance to hear Jimmy speak recently at a family office conference in Atlanta, and his energy just completely shifted the room. And I felt like everyone that came after incorporated things that he taught, and the conference was simply better because of it. And if you're going to sit through presentations all day, it's like, I was very grateful to Jimmy that they were great. And so
Thanks.
we're going to learn, so much from him today. Um, it's just a great addition to our community. I'm very grateful. And it's fun. Actually, some of you in the audience I know are familiar with Jimmy. There's Melissa Blendner is actually working with you, and she'll be presenting at a conference we're all attending in Puerto Rico just next week. So
It's going to be epic. Yeah.
it's going to be epic. It's going to be fun to see your work in action, and I hope to get to work with you as well. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the stage over to Jimmy to take it
Oh,
away.
thanks, Danielle. I always get asked, what do I prefer? I get to speak. I'm always so honored every time I get to speak, and I never take it for granted, even, 20 years into doing this, which that seems crazy as well. But I'm always asked, do you prefer speaking in person or doing things virtually? In fact, I was just in Charleston, South Carolina, 3 weeks ago now, and I was getting to host a virtual event, which was kind of like this, but a big Zoom room where I could see everybody, and I got asked the same question. And I said, I love both for different reasons. Next week in Puerto Rico, I will love the fact that I'm in a room with people. But what I love about an event like this is that, especially with the chat, it's that everybody gets a front row seat. At any time, I could call on somebody. But I also know that in an hour that we have here together, there's some pitfalls and some danger spots. And so what I'm going to encourage you to do is what I tell my audiences to do is, can we make an agreement to make this a one tab event? So just in the chats real quick, just I'm going to have anxiety, but tell me how many tabs you have open on your browser right now, because I'm always curious. And if Dave answers, my business partner, I see Melissa's zero. She knows, even if she's lying, she knows that's the answer I wanted. Kate has six. Erica has so many tabs. Many. Yeah, many. Zero. Okay, John. Yeah, Zoom app, that helps. Chris has four. 40 before this. All right. If I break it into hives just a little. Okay. So can we just, you are giving us your most valuable asset right now is your time. So would you not want to make the most of this, right? So between you and I always ask that we just agree that let's just pretend you and I are sitting in a room together, having a cup of coffee or a cocktail or a water or whatever your libation of choice is, and let's all just make this a one tab event for an hour. Your team's gonna be okay, your family's gonna be okay, your social media is gonna, I promise it will all be there when you come back. So if you will do that for me, if you'll just put one in the chat, I at least know who's on my team here, and I appreciate that. The mobile app does help that as well for those of you that are there. Okay, I got enough ones. The other thing, it's so funny. So, with things like this, you never know how technology is going to go, right, Danielle? And the one thing I know I don't have to worry about, reminds me of one of the right towards the beginning of I've been speaking for a while, but I also MC big events, and it was one of the first times I was going to get to MC a pretty large event. And the same couple that I was working with in Charleston, South Carolina, this was actually an event in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and it was a room full of about 5,000 people. And the husband and wife duo that I work with often, they produce events for some of the biggest names in the world, primarily Tony Robbins. So they do all of Tony Robbins events and Dean Graziosi and you name the all Mel Robbins and you name it, they do their events for them. And this was the first day I had actually met Barry is the female, Blue is that sometimes like Barry and Blue. I'm like, it's not Bluey, it's not so Barry, lovely lady, Blue's kind of the tech side. And I met them that morning because I wasn't actually emceeing this particular event. It was a friend's event, and that night we were doing a thing called the Great American Speak Off. And what it was is think of it as like American Idol for speaking, where people got to get up and they had like 1 to 2 minutes to tell a story. And I was going to be a judge, but I was also going to be the host. Think of me as I was going to be the Ryan Seacrest of this evening. And so they had already started the event. I met Barry that morning, and my plan was just to sit back, enjoy the event all
Enjoy.
day, and do my show was going to be that evening. And right, we'd just taken a break, and Barry comes and taps me on the shoulder. Granted, I had just met her like 2 hours before. She's like, "Hey, Jimmy, need a favor." She goes, "When we come back from this break," she goes, "Will you go jump on stage and just introduce yourself, let everybody know like why they need to come to the speak off that night, not to go off to dinner and stuff, but to really come back here and then bring up the next speaker who happened to be a friend of mine." I was like, "Okay, I think I can do that." I said, "How long do I have?" She's like, "2 minutes." I was like, "Okay." So I grab a mic, and all of a sudden, kind of the big voice of God, like the big voiceover is like, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage." And the DJ, plays my song. I always used to jump on the stage to Justin Timberlake suit and tie. And I run on with all this energy. And so remember, they said 5,000 people that don't know me. There is no home field advantage here. So I am talking to a room full of strangers that I have to introduce myself, create some kind of credibility, and give them a clear call to action about why they need to show up that night. So I kind of get a little anecdote in my head of an idea of something that had been referenced earlier that day. And so I jump on the stage. I'm like, "Hi, my name is Jimmy Hayes Nelson. Most people just call me Coach Jimmy. I know we haven't met. But before I ever started public speaking, my background was in acting and performing. And right then, my mic goes out. And so, and so this was a very vocal group. I thought I was in like a Southern Baptist church for a minute because they're like people yelling at me, going, "Your mic's out, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, and so it's like, okay, sink or swim time. What do I do? And Blue, the husband side of Barry and Blue, who handles all the tech, comes screaming down the aisle with a mic and hands it to me. And just in a happy, magical accident, I make eye contact with the DJ in the back of the room. And we just kind of gave each other one of those knowing nods. And so I run off stage. And it was just something I'm like, he knows what I want to do. So I run off stage. He replays the music and just we make a bit out of it. I jump back on stage. He replays the song. And I jumped back in and I said, "Hi, my name is Jimmy Hayes Nelson. I don't know if you've heard before, but my background is as an actor and a performer. And what I want you to do," and so I was like, "Oh, and what I do now is," so again, I had to introduce myself. I had to give them some credibility and a call to action. And in the middle of the next sentence, the mic goes out again. And I was like, "Okay, I'm the new guy. I'm being
Yeah,
punked." That's exactly
seriously,
like
you're like,
this was my
who
like
is
frat
playing?
initiation. And so again, this oh so helpful audience starts yelling at me, "Do you know your mic's out? Mama?" And so I don't know if Danielle, if you've ever been to some of these really big events when they do Q&A, they have these mics that are like inside like a big plushie and almost looks like a dice. And so where they can throw it around the audience. And this dude with a great arm that's sitting in the back of this group of 5,000 people hurls this mic at me. So I catch it. I start again, and I really wish I was joking. The third mic goes out. And by this point, like I'm just kind of playing along with it and being a little self-deprecating. And by this point, like they're cheering me on. And
Yeah,
so what
yeah.
I do is I literally drop the mic and I go into my full, my background was a theater major, and I go full Shakespeare, hit the back of the wall voice because I'm like, okay, I gotta fill this auditorium of 5,000 people. And I kind of make a joke and I'm like, "Can you hear me?" And you like, "Yes." And then I proceed to go who I am. I tell them what I've been doing for the past, 15 years. I've been doing XYZ. Tonight is the Great American Speak Off. You need to come because of this. I showed them the value and what the offer was, and then said, Your steps tonight are to be back here at XYZ time and give them a very clear call to action on what they needed to do. And literally, Daniel, when I look at my trajectory, that's what I've been doing for the past 20 years now is helping people tell a story in front of an audience that most of the time don't know them, right? That you have no credibility with. They don't know you. They don't know why they should listen to you, and a clear call to action. And what I believe, and my partners at WellCrafted Story believe, is everyone has a seven-figure story if it's well crafted. And what we have found, and you know this sitting through these presentation places that we have, is there are so many brilliant people with amazing offers, with the opportunities to make and manage lots of money, and they just talk over people's head or they never connect with their audience because they haven't learned how to communicate human to human before we get to the offer or the opportunity. And so with the next 45 minutes that we have here, what I would love to teach to your audience is what we call the 5 C's of a well-crafted story. And it is the exact same formula that we have used to train speakers for Grant Cardone, for Tony Robbins. Obviously, I'm at all at Neil Green's Ja Boy production events. And it's the same formula, and it works regardless if it's a keynote, if it's a webinar, like something like this. It works if you're going to be a guest on a podcast, and it even works in networking situations where instead of just walking around and everybody's exchanging business cards, who all has a stack of these on their desk right
Yeah.
now that they've
Yeah.
never talked to any of these people? You come home with one of these and you're like, I bet those are lovely people, but I don't remember anything about any of them outside of if they have their picture on it as well. So I had a mentor one time that said smart people take notes. So I'm hoping that you have something out. And what I do is I just want to walk you through uh, the 5 C's of a well-crafted story. And then what I hope to do is leave some time for Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, I mean, absolutely, if you guys want to if there's things that really, really resonate with you, put it in the chat because I always love seeing that and seeing your aha moments. But then I will look back through or re-ask for your questions at the end as well. So let's dive in, shall we? Okay, the first C of a well-crafted story is clarity. And it's the step that everybody skips. Everybody skips. When we sit down with a new client, there are 2 questions that we ask, and they sound like really simple questions. And in fact, I'm going to ask somebody in the chat to repost these questions as I say them. The first question you're going to ask is, who is your ideal audience? Oh, I knew Dave was going to be Johnny on the spot. Dave, you're cheating because you already know where I'm going with this. So thank you, Leila. Who is your ideal audience? And if your answer is everybody, I'm loving and going to tell you that's the wrong answer. And it's one of those things that I understand. So my background was in health and fitness. I worked with Beachbody, the P90X Insanity in-home fitness people, right? I lost 100 pounds with them as a customer. And
Wow.
then as I was pursuing my acting career in New York, they started their affiliate marketing things. And so I was building my business and helping train their salespeople. And I was so desperate early on that I thought, if you could fog a mirror, you could be my customer. It was just like I just shot like the biggest net, but I didn't really connect with a lot of people. And so who's your ideal audience is get really specific. And the one pushback we get sometimes with clients is they're afraid that if they skew too narrow, they're leaving money on the table. And I'm telling you, obviously you're on this call, so you're already super successful. What I'm hoping to do is in the next 45 minutes is to show you where you actually are leaving money and influence and impact on the table. And I'm going to tell you, by getting really clear in your ideal audience, that's not one of them. In fact, it's going to help you more. I have a friend named Hope, and Hope was a yoga instructor. And what I know about yoga instructors, real estate agents, and financial advisors is you can throw a rock and hit any of them anywhere, like in my neighborhood. It's like not that they're not good at what they do, there's just lots of them. So, how do you stand out? And Hope was serving a lot of people, and she had just kind of generic yoga studio in Wisconsin. And just kind of by happenstance, kismet, she started working with a gentleman that was a trucker, like an 18-wheeler trucker guy. He's like, "Hey, I'm really sedentary. We don't get to move a lot. Can you help me?" And she started helping him, and he kind of encouraged her. He said, "Hope, we need what you do." Now, granted, Hope is not a truck driver. Hope knew nothing about truck driving. She was just serving an audience where there was a gap that nobody was actually serving. That was actually her ideal audience and knows, oh, I can serve these people. And so She had a business coach she ran that by, and he challenged her. He said, for a year, he said, market to nothing but these truck drivers. And she was like, I don't know. But he's like, he goes, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And so all of a sudden, and then so she renamed, she launched kind of a new company and called it Mother Trucking Yoga, which is the greatest name ever in the history of ever. It
Amazing.
markets itself. But here's what happened, Danielle. All of a sudden, every trucking convention, podcast, newsletter, association kept having Hope come talk. And all of a sudden, there is no competition for Hope because she is talking to an audience where nobody else is playing in that arena at all. Right now, we're working with Melissa tomorrow. Tomorrow next week, you're going to hear about the exciting things they're doing at Ancient Lore Village, which is it's a themed destination resort and hotel, right? And so we started talking about the people that are really into that fantasy genre, people that are really into Lord of the Rings and Dungeons and Dragons. And me and my team and Dave did all this research about what a huge community this is, how much money they spend, but they don't have anywhere to gather outside of that they want to go all the way to New Zealand to go do the Lord of the Rings tour, right? And so part of the presentation was getting really clear on who's the audience, what's the want, where's the gap, right? So the first part of clarity is who's your ideal audience. The second part, which I've already kind of bled into, is what's the problem that you solve, right? The problem that Ancient Lore Village is solving right now is people that are really passionate about a fantasy genre that have nowhere to go have a immersive experience to join with people that are as passionate about what they want. Now here's the pitfall. So you may get real clear on who you're serving, but when I ask you what problem do you solve, you you answer with your solution. And this is like we're going to see this next week in Puerto Rico. I know it, Danielle. People are going to get up there and immediately go to their solution without identifying the problem, where there's a gap, and why their investment opportunity serves something. They're just going to go up there and go straight to those stats and the charts. And we've all seen like the slides that make our eye like you're like, do you want me to read those 8 paragraphs or listen to you? Because I can't do both. And
Right.
and so not only do we need to identify the problem, I can give you an example. Here's a great example. We'll use health and fitness again. So when I was working with health and fitness coaches, I would say, what problem do you solve? And the problem I solve is healthy eating. Healthy eating, not a problem. If we all had that problem, we would all look fantastic, right? Usually the problem is, mindlessly eating 3 bags of Cheetos while binge watching Netflix. Stress eating is a problem. What is the problem that you solve? And I'll give you an extra nugget. If you can describe the problem the way your client would describe it, you're already in their heads. They're going to go, why does she know exactly what I'm thinking? It's another great example. Work with a lot of like life coaches, business coaches, and they'll use things like, oh, the problem I solve is I help people with a new mindset. And I was like, I know what you're saying. However, I have never known anybody that woke up in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. in a panic going, oh my, you know what I need? I need a new mindset. Do they? Yes. Has that how they describe it? No. It's things like overwhelm, fear, stuck, uncertainty. Here's a great way to look at it. How would they describe their problem to like the last thing they say to their spouse before bed or with a girlfriend over a glass of wine or just when you're just kind of that closest person to you when you're just like they're like tell me about your day and you go ugh. And whatever that sentence is that comes out of their mouth next the way they would say it, you need to be using that same language in your presentations, in your marketing, and how you describe what you do. And so a lot of the times, if somebody asks me, Jimmy, what do you do for a living? I'll say, well, I help businesses raise capital or get more clients. Now, I don't say I'm a speaking and presentation coach. I am. That's how I solve that problem. But what I do is I help people either raise more capital or get more clients, depending on what they want to do, right? A presentation that sticks. That's the problem I'm solving. The way I do it is with the well-crafted story method that I'm sharing with you guys today. So that's all in the first C. And that's why we probably take more time with this first C than anything else, because it's just, you got to get clear. If you don't know the target you're trying to hit, anything else doesn't matter. It's just noise. It's like not having a target on the, if I was trying to hit my little Sinatra hat back here, but he wasn't there. Well, I could throw darts anywhere. I got to get real. No, I want to hit the hat, right? And so that let's think of clarity as trying to hit the hat, right? Okay, C number two is connection. Connection. You got to emotionally connect with me before you start teaching. Again, what people want to do is they want to go straight to teaching. They want to go straight to let me show you how smart I am, or let me show you how great my solution is. And the fastest way to create connection is with a personal story. I did it with you guys, right? I told the microphone story. A lot of the time, sometimes and I haven't really zeroed in on which story you're going to get to hear, Danielle, next week. You might hear the mic story again, but a lot of times I tell a story about being a little fat kid in West Texas, in Lubbock, Texas, when I was in the first grade. And the first time I ever was on stage and I sang a solo and I was scared to death. But I talk about how it was the first time in my life I got a positive emotional response from an audience, right? And so I told a personal story. Your personal story needs to do three things. It needs to tell you why you're just like me. You understand my problem, right? You understand my problem. Have you ever had the time when, like, if you want to go talk to a buddy, if I'm going to talk to Dave, and there's sometimes I just want to talk to Dave and I'm not looking for a solution from Dave. I just want Dave for a second to go, dude, that sucks. I get it. Like, you just want that friend for a minute where you just kind of come up beside him. And your audience needs to understand that you understand their issue. So maybe that is a trust issue on where to put their money. You understand that they tried something before and got totally burned. Um, Great example. So my dad's been in real estate for 20 something years. And he was, until I was 14, 15 years old, my dad was a nuclear engineer. So you know, it's like a big left turn and a career. But what my dad tells his story is that he had a terrible experience with a real estate agent when he was buying a house, right? And so when he tells his story, he talks about all the things that went wrong because his audience has probably had a bad experience with some agent at some point. And so the first thing is that you're just like me. You understand my pain point. The second is, why are you ahead of me? Why are you a few steps ahead of me? Or in probably a lot of y'all's case, why are you many, 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 many steps ahead of me and an expert? So why have you figured out something I haven't yet? Right? Because then I'm like, well, it's one okay, we can, so many people if they share the sob part of the story, that's fine. But you can't leave your audience in the hole. You can't just be a woe is me story. You got to bring us back out and say, but here was the pivot. Here's what I did. Here's where I'm ahead of you. So with my dad, tells the story about terrible experience, losing out on this house and stuff. And then he talks about what he did in order to, as he started educating himself in the industry, what a good agent does, why he started doing this. And the third part is why it matters to you. So why you're just like me, why you're actually an expert in the thing that you and I probably both struggled on, and why it matters to you. Why this is something beyond I need an investor or I need a client or I need some money because nobody wants to feel like a number or just a dollar sign in something. Why does it matter to you? I think that's because that's where we connect with people all day long. And so my dad talks about that. He goes, and I do this now because I never want anyone to ever have the experience that I had with that original agent. And that's why I do what I do. Right. So and really quickly, your story can be a story about your industry, your opportunity, your investment. That's fine. It doesn't have to be. Because as long as it's going to show the same emotional beats. So, a perfect example, my story for you guys that I chose today about the mics wasn't because it was the same industry. You may have never been on stage in front of 5,000 people, but I bet you have been in front of a stranger that didn't know who you were, that you needed to create some kind of like authority with, and give them a clear call to action on what the next step is with their business. So I took a random story, but I had to tie it to what I knew my audience was going to do. And a lot of times we do that with a technique at the end of the story. We go, hey, for me, it was an audience of 5,000 strangers. For you, it may be that next sales call. It may be that networking event where you find yourself in front of strangers that are your ideal audience that you have a very short amount of time to introduce yourself, create authority, and have them take the next step. So sometimes it's an industry one, and sometimes it's not. What we do with our clients is we take them through kind of a story memory jogger to figure out what's the best lead as well. So clarity, number one C. Two, connection with a personal story. Like be a human before we get to our stats. So for all who in, okay, I always say there's two types of people. there are how people and there are wow people. And wow people, shocking, I'm a wow person. I'm like the visionary, right? I want to jump from A to D, and I'm just like, we're going to go from here to the top of the mountain. The how people, like my business partner Dave, background as a commercial real estate lawyer. We were just having this conversation this morning. You need both, and you need. So, who are my detail people in the chat? Like, if you are just, you're the numbers person, you're what I lovingly call calculator brain, or like you bog down in the minutia of, oh, what's this step and this step and this step? Just just say put calculator in the chat. I just want to okay. Asil's a visionary. Or
I'm
Asim,
I'm
sorry.
curious. I'm like think all the details. Is that like a female trait? I don't
Nope.
know.
You know, it's funny.
Multitasking.
I've had people think that my being like the wow person is the
Yeah.
female trait because the way we used to teach this was
Yeah.
the way my other business partner Danny, who's not with us, when he teaches us, he calls it the Joe Fridays and the Julia Roberts, and I'm like, does that make me Julia Roberts? And so it's funny, Daniel, that you asked that because I have
Yeah.
had people try to associate it gender wise.
But
And it
it doesn't
doesn't. And,
work
and
that
Dave
way.
and I are the perfect example of that. Is
Yeah.
we could not attack things more differently. Danny sits somewhere in the middle. He's our professor, Dr. Danny Purcell. He's our author and the professor thing. But Dave skews really towards the how and the little tiny details and the operation side of things. And
Yeah.
so know this is that your audience is going to be mixed of both. And a really great presentation addresses the needs of both. So you see it in marriages and business partners, and like there's usually one on each, and they need each other and they drive each other nuts also. Okay, so for you,
And in
calculator, detail, all the little things, the next two C's are for you. This next one is your content. This is where you get to your numbers. This is where you can show your charts and graphs. Not too many of them because we don't want to bog down in, but this is where you get to teach. And the what we encourage people to do is we usually like to teach in threes. And I'm always reminded when I teach this presentation, I will tell you to teach in threes as I'm teaching you the five C's. So do as I say, not as I do. But you really, a five's about as much because what I find is people think the more I throw into a presentation, the more valuable it's going to be. A great example of this, and I love him to death, and I love the fact that he's so coachable, and we'll see him next week, is Pappy Danuzo, right?
yeah.
Pappy is brilliant, and Pappy is this mindset coach, and just, it's something this like at drinking out of a fire hydrant.
Yes.
And so the first time I was ever with Pappy, it was his 2 day event. So he could just spew, he had all the time in the world. Then we went to the next event and he had 20 minutes. And he was trying to take a 2 day event and put it all into 20 minutes. And the feedback we got was, wow, that was a lot. They couldn't take it all in. And so if you can't take it all in, then it's as effective as if you didn't teach them at all.
Mhm.
And to his credit, we sat down, brought us in, worked with him, and his next one was like, I mean, everybody's like, oh, I get it. And they wanted to do business with me. They wanted to take the next step with him, not because he taught them everything he knew. He
Right.
knew here are the three things. And it's not always the most info. It's who solves problems when they're teaching. So if I have three things, I want to find maybe two short-term problems and one long-term problem, or three highlights of why your investment opportunity, three problems that it solves, or three things that it does. Or it could be, one could be just the numbers, and one could be the vision for the next steps, and one could be, what it means for the people that are getting involved with them as well. There's so many ways to do this. And it's one of the things where me and Danny and Dave, when we jump in with a client, then we will come up with like a bucket of 15 things they could teach. But then each time they're going to be in front of that audience, we're like, it's these three this time. So it can change depending on who your audience is that day. I would probably pick three things for this audience, a little different than if I was choosing three things for my dad's audience with his real estate people. Because then I'm like, okay, and this is why you got to know your audience. It's okay, what do they deal with the most, right? Um, Content
And
stuff.
Jimmy, while we're on the audience type question,
Yeah.
there was a attendee question. They want to
Okay.
know, can a calculator type person also float back and forth with being a wow person?
Yeah. If you have both sides, and there are those people, consider yourself lucky.
It's awesome. Yeah.
I have had to become more analytical, and I think people that are willing to work on this go both ways. Dave is a great public speaker. And so on the other side, I've seen him tell brilliant stories. We have a picture back him of he and I co-hosting an event where we brought Gary Vaynerchuk in. And Dave got up and told one of the most brilliant stories I've ever seen in my life. You would think he was the one with the theater background. And so
Yeah.
absolutely, like you can ebb and flow this way. As long as you know it's not so much who you are, it's who
Hmm.
your audience is. Dave and I had a similar mentor. This is funny that you brought this up because I haven't used this example in a while. We had a mentor and he talked to us more about like five personality types as opposed to me kind of breaking it into two. And what he kept trying to teach us was it's not so much that they recognize which type you are, it's that you identify who they are quickly and speak their language. Right? If what gets me excited as a wow person, if you make it exciting and it seems fun, I'm probably going to throw my credit card at you without really realizing what I even signed up for. Right? So, but if I recognize somebody else isn't as extroverted as I am, and really what matters to them is the security aspect or just the bottom line or just the ROI, if I keep talking about fun, I haven't done my job because I'm talking about what about it to me. So we can have things that appeal to our opportunity to us most, but just because that's our favorite part of our opportunity doesn't mean that's going to be why somebody else gets involved with that opportunity as well. So great question. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Um, the other opportunity you have when you're doing your content is this is also a time to embed testimonies of other people that have worked with you. So,
Hmm.
and the way we do this is I already did it. I brought up Melissa. And so what I
Yes, there
do is
you
I
go.
teach a lesson. I go, oh my gosh, let me tell you how we solve this for Melissa, or let me show you how we solve this for Pappy. So in your content, as you're teaching, you can say, the next thing I'm going to do is talk about, uncertainty. Billy and Sally were people that came to us and they just were uncertain what to do with their investment. So what we did is we sat down with Billy and Sally and then you just go back to teaching. And what this does is it allows what we call the second conversation to happen in the back of your head. Have you guys ever been a part of a presentation where the person gives up and they just like teach and teach and teach and teach and teach and teach and they get to the end and it's time for the call to action and the energy completely changes? Like you can feel like, oh, here comes the pitch. Here's what I'm gonna ask, right? And what happens is I haven't had time. If you haven't told me that, oh, there may be an offer coming or something you want me to do, or that you do it with other people, my brain hasn't had time to go, huh, well, he works with Melissa. I wonder if they only work with people that have brick and mortars. I wonder if he could work with me because my business is this way. I wonder how much they are. Maybe they just work with newbies and I'm too experienced, or maybe I'm a newbie. Maybe I'm not as experienced enough to work with those guys. And it's what we call the second conversation, and it's something you actually want because they can kind of start like hemming and hawing this stuff out before you get to the ask at the very end. Plus, it just continues to add to your credibility. I did not get up here and start telling you, I've embedded little things of, hey, I've done this, I've worked here, but I didn't lead with my resume. So I feel like my credibility builds throughout the talk because I start talking about people that me and my team have actually gotten people results for. Um, and the other thing you can do here is embed the call to action, which is going to be our next C. So let's say what I want everybody to do is sign up for a free call at the end of a presentation. So if I'm talking, and I'll go back and use Melissa as an example, is I would say something like, you know, Melissa took advantage of our five C's call. And during that, and then I go on and somebody's go, what the heck's a five C's call? They're already asking this. So at the end, when I say my five C's, so a lot of times, hey, you want them to come in the office, you want to have a consultation, you want them to download your one sheet, you have a PDF, you have a video series, whatever that is, embed while you're teaching the thing that you want them to do. So if it's you want somebody to download your one sheet, hey, you know, Billy had a lot of questions. And Billy, when he downloaded our one sheet, we were able to go over with him XYZ. So you've already embedded later what you're going to bring up, which is one, two, three, your fourth C, which is your call to action. CTA. It's again, Daniel, you're not going to be able to turn this off next week. Watch how many people have no call to action. They're going to
Hmm.
talk for 15 minutes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And what they're going to do is just, hope people bump into them at cocktail hour or dinner and stuff. And that's going to happen. It's fine.
Right,
But
right.
That's the people that have a very clear call to action. And this specifically for your how people in your audience. You need to tell them what to do, what it is, how it works, right?
Mhm.
So, you know, what your next step is to book blah 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 blah. Go to XYZ website. Meet me in the back corner of the room. Even that's a call to action and a live thing. Your next step is at this lunch break, I will be at that corner. Please meet me there and let's discuss. Because if you leave it to, the worst is when I see this when people are on podcast. Get to the end of the podcast. Danielle, thank you so much for being on the podcast. How do people connect with you? Well, you can connect with me on LinkedIn or my Instagram or email me here. And every time you put an or in there or a
Yeah.
comma, people do nothing. You can
Mhm.
have all those things. You can have a different call to action in different talks, but any one talk, you can only bring up one. So I may have a call to action for a podcast, a different call to action when I'm live. So again, you can have multiple call to actions, just don't offer multiple call to actions in any one presentation because it just creates interference. And people, the minute they pause and they're not sure, or it's like, hey, scan the QR code or do this or do
Yeah.
that, they freeze.
Paralysis.
And
Mhm.
again, the same thing I said, we sit with our clients, we make a bucket of potential CTAs and like, okay, what's your talk next week? Okay, here's the story we're going to pick out of our bucket of stories that we've kind of fleshed out. Here are the content pieces out of our bucket of content pieces. Here's the three we're going to use for this audience. And out of our bucket of call to actions, here's your one call to action this time as well. But just pick one at any given time. So the next time, hey, I'm about to. This is great for your social media as well. I see this all the time. You're going to do a video on LinkedIn or Instagram and talk about your next offering or an opportunity. Hey, even if it's, and you've seen this, you'll see this all the time on social media. If this interests you, comment opportunity in the bottom and I'll reach out. One thing. Comment here. Click the link. Do the thing. One thing. So we got clarity, connection, content, call to action, and number 5 is your close. And so think about it as you actually kind of have two closes. Every good because you have two types of people in your audience. So think of number 4 CTA as basically the close primarily for your technical people. You want everybody to do it, but you're really explaining to them. Oh, you know what? I'm ahead of time here. I'll give you one more before we get to the close. In the middle of that CTA, we have a thing called is, does, means. So again, let's say what you want them to do is to sign up to have a call, to sit down to learn more. And it's, your opportunity call or whatever you're going to call it. And then what you would do is what it is a 30-minute call. What it does is it allows us to sit down and see what your needs are and what our opportunities are and how those align. What that means is you have a personalized profile to then make an educated, excited decision whether or not to move forward with us. So I'm going to do that again. What it is. So let's say it's a PDF. I used to do this with a food guide when I was doing health and fitness. Download the food guide. What it is a PDF that will download straight to your phone. What it does is it allows you to look at your food options when you're out with friends at a happy hour or whatever and see your best choices. What that means for you is you can go out confidently, still have a social life without worrying about undoing all the hard work that you've done to this point with your health and fitness, right? Is, does, means. And if you just line that out, because again, people are giving you, specifically it's a call, they're giving you their most valuable asset, which is their time. So if you show them what it's in for them, how much time is it going to cost me? What are we going to do on this thing? Are we just going to kind of shoot the bull or are there things that are actually going to happen here? Which
Mhm.
leads me to number 5, the close. And think of this as the emotional close. And the point of this close is to get them picturing on the other side of doing business with you. What does life look like on the other side of them saying yes? On the other side of them signing up for the call or downloading the one sheet?
Mhm.
Why is it going to be better for them? Um, so we can do one of two things with this. One way is to tell another story. And if you choose to tell another story, most of the time, it would be to handle an objection. So um, in the chat, Give me something that would be an objection on why your ideal audience or your ideal client sees your presentation, sees your opportunity, and would say no. Like, why wouldn't they sign up? I'm going to guess what some of them are, but I'm going to wait here just a second. Need more information. Okay, Michael, that's good. Too expensive. Money. Francis, thank you. I can do it on my own. Dave. I've done this before and it didn't work. That's great, Matt. Oh my gosh. Seems too big. All right, John, let me keep going. These are great. Already have a long, so I'm already working with somebody. Willard, that's great. Too difficult, John. That's fantastic. So a lot of times we find things like urgency is a big one. Why now? Why do it now? Right? I don't have the time. That one's great, Danielle, as well. So what you're going to do is, and this is really nuanced, but follow me here. You're going to pick a story that has nothing to do with your topic that you've talked about this whole time. And you're going to tell a story about, let's say it's urgency. You're going to tell a story about a time in your life that something came up where you could have taken action or didn't take action. And by taking action, it paid off. Or by didn't taking action, it didn't. The one we see all the time, and Dave brought it up, is what we call a hire an expert story. I can do it on my own. Why do I need to hire an expert? Okay. So for 3 years, I worked at Disney World. 3 of the happiest years of my life. I had a blast working at Disney World. And I worked, if any of you have been to Disney World in Orlando, there's 4 parks. And I worked at what was the Disney MGM Studios, now called the Disney Hollywood Studios. In the middle of that park, there still is a replica of Grauman's Chinese Theater in LA. And what used to be inside that building was called the Great Movie Ride. It was a 30-minute tram ride through the history of the movies, and I loved it, and I was there almost daily. My favorite time to be in the park was to open because you'd walk into the park and it was quiet. Nobody's in there, kind of magical. And usually when you're in the park, the lights start coming on a little bit, but then the music pops on, Danielle, and you're in there by yourself and you feel like you kind of own Disney World, and it's great. But what we would do is we'd stand outside the ride at what they call rope drop. So there's the big, Hollywood Boulevard that comes all the way down there. But rope drop is they would let people in the park, but then there was a rope there that people just kind of all cram against. And so we'd watch all these families and everybody's so excited and the music starts and welcome to Disney MGM Studios. And they would drop the rope. And there were 2 types of families. There was the type of family that would just like just crazy bananas run into the park and off they went. Just no plan, no anything, off they went. Then there was like the families that had a little more reserve to them, and they would walk over to the kiosk where there would be a cast member there and the maps, and they would sit there and talk. They would look at the maps, talk to the cast member for a minute before they went into their day. So if it was a day I got to work a double and I was also there at the end of the park, we also would come out to the front of the ride towards the end of the night, and I saw 2 types of families. I saw a family that was at the happiest place on earth, that had spent their hard-earned time, thousands and thousands of dollars, and the kids are screaming and they're dragging them along, and it's chaos. They have not had a good day. They have wasted all their time and wasted all their money, and they're just miserable at the end of the day. Then on the other side, I would see a family that looked like it was straight out of a Disney commercial. They're holding hands, they're skipping. Everybody has an ice cream. They'd pop up to me like, "Oh my gosh, Jimmy, we had the greatest day. We did everything. Yours is the last ride we're going to do before we go watch the fireworks and Fantasmic. We're so glad that we took the time to talk to the expert and look over a map." In all of our lives, I find there's times that we think we can do something on our own just because we're excited about it. But those things are usually something you're only going to do once or twice in your life. For some families, it's going to Disney World. For other people, it's writing a presentation. Would you want to do something that you're only going to do once or twice in your life? Or what if you could work with somebody like that cast member did who helps people do this every day of the week? That's what we do at WellCrafted Story. So that is an example of a hire an expert story. It has nothing to do with my job, has nothing to do with what I've talked to you about, but I showed an example of somebody I've seen hire an expert and not hire an expert and how it went. Is there right? And so you guys can do that too. I mean, there's so many ways of like, oh, I tried to get in shape on my own, but I hired the trainer and that's why it worked. Or this is why I saved time or money. And here's the last thing, because I do want to leave us a little bit of time for Q&A. The other thing you can do at the very end of your close, and like I said, is just picture what it is on the other side of working with you. And we do that usually in what's called a repeated stem. And it's where you repeat a phrase 3 times with a different ending. The "I have a dream" speech is a great example of a picture a day. So if I was going to use an example, that would be something like, Picture a day where you no longer stress when you're going to be in front of that audience or on that Zoom or webinar because you know exactly what you're going to say. Picture a day when your new client comes to you and says, "Thank you so much for sharing your story. It gave me the confidence to take action and change my life." Picture a day where your business continues to grow, regardless if you're on a podcast, a Zoom, or in front of an audience, because you know exactly what to say and how to say it to move people forward. We are one call away. And so, what I did there is I picked a tactical thing, like picture a day when you're not stressed. The second one was an auditory one, picture a day when somebody says something to you. And the last one was aspirational, a bigger picture of that. So, you also can end that way. So, I know we have about 15 minutes, not even 15 minutes left here. So quick recap, and then we'll open this up to Q&A because in the corner of my eye, I see all this chat going on. I'm like, okay, these people can talk. Okay, so we got clarity, right? Who's your ideal audience? What problem do you solve? Connection. That story, why you're like me, why you're a few steps ahead of me or a lot of steps ahead of me, and why does it matter to you? Then teach me, solve some problems. In fact, if you're really good at the content, you're going to solve problems for them, or they're going to be able to have takeaways whether they do business with you or not. I always say, I hope everybody that's popped in today, you reach out, we become friends, I'm on your Christmas card list. But let's talk a tragedy. Let's say I never hear from you again. And that would be really sad. But hopefully you have something you can take away today to like put into action. The call to action. What do you want them to do? What's the next steps? And close. So, one of the most common questions we get is, "Hey, Jimmy, this is great. This is a lot. Can you help me map out my 5 C's?" And the answer is yes. And so, we've worked it out with Danielle, and she's been so generous to make sure everybody that's either on this call live or is watching the recording is going to be able to get a 5 C's call with me and my team. And what it is, it's a 45-minute call where we go over what you're doing now. Hey, the things that are working, we're not going to mess with those. We're not going to reinvent the wheel if something's working well for you. But we're going to put your presentation or your offer against our 5 C's and just map out all 5 C's for you. And what that means for you is now you know, hey, this is what's already working, or here's where we could get a little better. So therefore, you have more success every time you're in front of your ideal audience. And what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to put the link in the chat here, if I can figure out how to do that. Oh, here we go. Host and panelists? No, I want everyone.
Amazing.
Everyone. Nope. And
Everyone who's on this call, just know that
there
I
you
will
go.
send the recording and I'll include that link in the follow-up email tomorrow as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So,
that is so generous, Jimmy.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
just
let's open
honored.
it up for questions. I'd like, this has been,
All
you
right,
have such a
I
great
got one.
audience. Okay, go ahead.
I got one. How important does having something visual play when you're speaking to an audience, or does it completely, like if you're in front of a group, what are your recommendations?
It depends on the presentation. And so what's really interesting is uh, my co-host Danny does a lot of presentations for financial advisors,
Yeah,
and he uses a deck of like 50 slides. He uses a lot of pictures and images. Um,
yeah,
and you asked me beforehand, you're like, "Are you going to share your screen?" I purposely don't use any images just to go, look, let me show you how I would do this with no images.
yeah,
It depends on the presentation. Here's the
yeah,
pitfalls. And Dave, when we work with people and we help build people's decks as well, as we go
yeah.
through, get rid of any paragraphs, get rid of
Mhm.
any small print, anything like the more you can either just what you're talking about, capture it in an image of like what the energy would be. But let's say there is an ROI, or this is how long the hold is, or here there you need some charts and graphs. Just make them big and very simple. And I understand you're like, hey, you can have your disclaimer one, pop that one up. Yeah, we always want to be legal, we always want
Right,
to be compliant, right? So that
right.
I'm saying beyond that is another thing that Dave does really well is let's say you have multiple bullet points or things you want to talk about on one slide. Instead of having it all there at once, create animations. So where it's like one bullet point, talk about it, none, click. The second thing pops up, click. Because the minute I'm trying
Oh,
to
I like
read
that.
and
Yeah,
listen
yeah,
to you, I'm
yeah.
I'm probably doing neither very
Right.
well either. So I think visuals are super important. I think it's important to have the one sheet to say, let me show you more about, sometimes that's the other option. Instead of like overloading them with slides, is
Yeah,
simply having some kind of one sheet or a pamphlet or something physical that you can
smart.
set in front of them as well. Because what you're trying to do is paint the picture. I would say the presentation is just trying to scratch the itch enough to they want to continue the conversation.
Yeah. So like it's
Then Then you can go into all the nuts and bolts and the minutia and all the technical terms. The more we can stay out of jargon, the more we can just talk. Like if somebody has no idea what we do and they can still understand us, I think the more we convert as well.
So good. So good. All right. Erica Milsom, thank you for your question. She says, one of my issues is learning to close when asking for an investment. I'm used to closing a story or an impact endeavor, and I always feel like it's wrapping up the gift of memory for the audience. But when I'm asking for something, I have a hard time feeling confident and clear. Any advice?
I always make it a question, you know,
Mm,
so it's like, so this is what I have. Do you, your next step would be this. Would that make sense for us to continue this conversation? And if the answer is no, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I've never been one that said, hey, I'm going to help you close everybody. And I had a mentor, Dave, and I also had a different mentor early on our day that said, amateur sell, professional sort. And what I mean
mm,
by that is all we're doing is looking for the people that are looking for us. The minute
yes.
I have to convince you to take the next step with me, they're probably gonna be kind of a pain as a client or as an investor or whatever also. Because if I have
Yeah,
to like drag you across the finish line, I'm probably gonna be dragging you the rest of our relationship. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm so tired of transactional business. I want a
hmm,
long-term relationship. I want us to continue to be friends and interact regardless if money's still changing hands or anything. I don't want to look at you as a number, right? And
yeah,
I feel like doing it that way is like, does this make sense to you? And somebody goes, no. And here, you know what the other opportunity is there, Erica? It's like, oh, I totally understand. The fact that you give me your time is great. It's not for everyone. Who do you know that might actually be interested in this? And I've
there you
had
go.
no's turn into five other yeses because they're like, no, this isn't my bag, but I got three people that's right up their alley. And
That's
I just
amazing.
went for, and it took me a long time because I would feel desperate, or I would feel like if they said no to my opportunity, they were saying no to me. And that was just my old baggage of being, little fat Jimmy from a broken home. I had my own issues I had to deal with first. But now I learn, I'm like, hey, I know what I have is valuable. Does this interest you? And if they say no, who do you know that does? Nobody? Great. If you think of somebody after this, I just appreciate you connecting us. And that's how I go forward with that.
That's amazing. And the impression that you leave and the confidence and the clarity. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
It
probably
never
so
comes across desperate.
understated. Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing.
Have any more?
Well, are there any other questions before we wrap things up today? This has been so good. I mean, I've been scheming, and again, it's like I could keep scheming in my head, or I can go with a guide, someone who
Yeah.
can help make turn this into an
And
action.
so, and next week, you're not going to be able to turn that off. You're going to watch every one of these presentations next week and
Oh
go. And it kind of happened in Atlanta, and it
yeah.
wasn't on purpose because everybody, for those of you, I talked first. I'm speaking first again in Puerto Rico, and
Yeah,
people would say, "Oh, Jimmy, I don't have all my five C's." And I'm like, well, you weren't supposed to because you didn't know what it was until this morning.
exactly.
So,
And then literally people are like, well, I'm gonna like swing this on the fly. And they were like making sure the C's were
or
incorporated.
what was so funny is somebody be like, "Oh, what was the third C?" And the audience would answer, not me.
Yeah.
So I was like, "Thanks for the commercial." They appreciate
Ah,
it.
we've got two really good ones. Okay,
Okay.
Nancy, what is the best way to ask clients for referrals?
Kind of like what I just laid out before, and even more so, it's a client. Hey, checking in. Are things good with you? What have you liked best about working with us so far? And when they answer, like, oh, thank you so much. Um, who else do you know that would want to have those same results that you've had?
That's
That's a great question just to
the
ask. Hey,
question.
who else do you know that would want to have this? I appreciate you trusting us and that you've had these great experiences. Who else do you know that would want that as well?
So good. All right, Francis asks, in terms of connecting, is making a prospect laugh or cry more valuable?
Danny and I say it's laughter. And the only reason we say this is, like I said, we judge the Great American Speak Off for Grant Cardone in like
Yeah.
multiple audience, I mean, multiple cities. And everybody came in and just everybody wanted to like give us their biggest sob story, which you can, but you can't leave me in the pit. I can't, if I am depressed after I'm done, and where it's like, and I'm so laugh or cry, Francis, there are those times where like, oh, they're thinking about like the legacy they're leaving for their grandkids and they get goosebumps and they cry that way. I don't know
Oh,
that one's better than the other, as long as they're moved emotionally to take the
yeah.
next step.
Connected. Yeah. Amazing. Well, it looks like Diana, way to make the call. You're gonna be fun to hear where things go after working with WellCrafted Story. And Chris, thank you for the kind words. I am so appreciative to you, Jimmy, and your team for being on this call. I have
Of
learned so
course.
much. I have a whole page of notes,
And I'm going to put that, I'll
and
put the link in the chat one more time for those who don't want
yes,
that 5C call, please,
amazing.
before it all books
I'm
up.
gonna
So,
save you needing to email me that. I've copied it right
yep.
now. Awesome.
Perfect.
Oh, we got a few people that have already scheduled.
Oh, thank you
Way to go.
guys.
I'm
Matt,
inspired.
looking
I'm
forward.
jumping on
Yeah.
the bandwagon. Well, I hope everyone has an amazing rest of the day. I will send the recording tomorrow. And Jimmy, I'll see you in Puerto Rico.
I'll see you soon.
All right. Take
Take
care,
care. Thank
everyone.
you,
Thank you
everybody.
so much.
Appreciate it.
Bye bye.